The night was calm, the kind where the only sounds were the soft rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. The forest seemed alive but peaceful, untouched by anything unnatural. That is, until a faint hum filled the air. It started as a low vibration, barely noticeable, but it grew louder with each passing second. Birds took flight from their perches, and small animals scurried into their burrows as if sensing something ominous approaching. High above the treetops, a sleek metallic object descended silently. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal under the pale light of the moon. The craft moved without sound, its shape insect-like, with sharp edges and glowing veins running along its hull. It hovered for a moment before touching down gently in a clearing deep within the woods. A hatch opened, and strange figures emerged, tall, slender beings with exoskeletons that gleamed faintly in the dark. They had elongated limbs, multiple, eyes that glowed faintly green, and mandibles that clicked softly as they communicated with one another. These were the Varnic, a species from a distant star system. For decades, they had observed Earth from afar, studying its wildlife through satellites and probes. Their conclusion? Earth's creatures were simple, predictable, and harmless. To them, this planet was nothing more than a resource world, waiting to be harvested. Now, they had arrived to confirm their findings and begin extraction operations. Zorvith, the leader of the expedition, stood taller than the others, his exoskeleton adorned with intricate patterns that marked his rank. He surveyed the area with satisfaction. "This will do," he said in their language, a series of clicks and whistles that translated roughly to human speech. "Begin the scans. Capture samples of the local fauna." The other Varnic nodded, their movements precise and efficient. They carried devices that looked like nets made of shimmering threads, along with scanners that emitted soft beams of light. One group fanned out into the forest while another set up equipment near the ship. Their mission was straightforward: collect data on Earth's animals, determine which ones posed no threat, and proceed with their plans. Meanwhile, miles away from the alien landing site, two humans were blissfully unaware of what had just occurred. Daniel and Megan were camping in the woods, enjoying a rare weekend getaway from the hustle and bustle of their small town. Daniel, a wiry man in his early 30s with short brown hair and a scruffy beard, was busy setting up their tent. Megan, a woman with long auburn hair tied back in a ponytail, sat nearby on a log, sipping coffee from a thermos. "You sure you don't want help?" Megan asked, raising an eyebrow at Daniel's struggling attempts to secure the tent poles. "Nah, I got this," Daniel replied, though his tone betrayed his frustration. Finally, after a few more minutes of fumbling, he managed to get the tent upright. "See? Told you," Megan chuckled and shook her head. "You're lucky I brought snacks. Otherwise, we'd both be sleeping on the ground tonight." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the pair decided to sit by the fire and stargaze. Megan leaned back against her backpack, gazing up at the stars. "It's crazy how big the universe is," she mused. "I mean, what are the chances we're alone out there?" Daniel shrugged. "Who knows? Maybe aliens are real, but they're too smart to bother with us. Or maybe they think we're boring." Megan smirked. "Boring? Us? Please, we're fascinating." Daniel laughed, but his smile faded when he noticed something unusual in the sky. At first he thought it was a shooting star, but it moved too slowly and erratically. Then it disappeared behind the trees. "Did you see that?" he asked, pointing toward the direction it vanished. Megan squinted. "See what?" "There was something up there." Daniel stood up, brushing dirt off his jeans. "Let's check it out. Are you serious?" Megan asked, incredulous. "You want to go chasing random lights in the middle of the woods?" "Why not? It could be cool. Besides, it's probably just a drone or something." Reluctantly, Megan agreed, and the two grabbed flashlights before heading deeper into the forest. The path was uneven, and the beam of their lights danced across tree trunks and bushes as they walked. The air grew colder, and the usual nighttime sounds of crickets and frogs seemed quieter than before. After about 20 minutes of walking, they reached a small clearing. What they saw stopped them in their tracks. In the center of the clearing stood a strange object. It looked like a mix between a spaceship and some kind of giant insect. Lights pulsed rhythmically along its surface, casting eerie shadows on the surrounding trees. Nearby, several figures moved around, examining cages containing deer, birds, and even insects. Megan gasped, clutching Daniel's arm. What is that? I have no idea, Daniel whispered, his voice trembling. But it's definitely not human. Before they could retreat, one of the figures turned toward them. Its glowing eyes locked onto their position, and it let out a series of rapid clicks. Another figure joined it, holding what appeared to be a weapon. Panic surged through Daniel and Megan as they realized they'd been spotted. Run, Daniel shouted. Grabbing Megan's hand and pulling her back the way they came, they sprinted through the forest, branches whipping at their faces and feet slipping on loose rocks. Behind them, they could hear the clicking sounds growing louder, accompanied by the crunch of footsteps on dry leaves. Whatever those things were, they were fast, and they were gaining ground. Just as Daniel and Megan thought they might escape, a bright light enveloped them. They froze, blinded, and disoriented. When the light faded, they found themselves surrounded by the insect-like creatures. One of them stepped forward, tilting its head as if studying them. They're just animals, Zorva said dismissively, his translator device converting his words into English. Primitive. Harmless. Daniel tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Megan, however, found her voice. We're not animals, she said firmly, glaring at the alien leader. We're human. Zorvath's mandibles twitched slightly, but he showed no sign of understanding or caring. With a wave of his clawed hand, he signaled for his subordinates to take the humans aboard their ship. As they were led away, Megan glanced back at the forest, wondering if they would ever see it or freedom again. Inside the ship, Daniel and Megan were placed in a containment chamber. The walls were smooth and cold, and the air smelled faintly metallic. They sat side by side, trying to process everything that had happened. This can't be real, Daniel muttered, running a hand through his hair. Aliens? Seriously? It's real. Megan replied, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. And if they think we're harmless, then we need to prove them wrong. How? We're stuck in here. We'll figure something out, Megan said, determination hardening her expression. We always do. Outside the chamber, Zorvath reviewed the data collected so far. Most of the Earth creatures they had studied were indeed docile and predictable. But there was something unsettling about these humans, their posture, their expressions, the way they communicated. Perhaps further observation was needed. For now, he decided to focus on completing the initial phase of their mission. Little did Zorvath know, his decision to underestimate humanity would lead to consequences far greater than he could imagine. The containment chamber was small and dimly lit, with no windows or visible exits. Daniel and Megan sat on the cold metal floor, their backs pressed against the curved wall. The air inside felt stale, and the faint hum of machinery echoed around them. Neither of them had spoken for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Megan broke the silence first. We can't just sit here, she said, her voice firm despite the uncertainty in her eyes. If we don't do something, they'll probably dissect us or worse. Daniel nodded, though his face showed clear signs of worry. Yeah, but what? Look at this place. There's no way out. It's like a prison cell made of alien tech. Megan leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. There has to be a way. They didn't bring us here just to lock us up forever. Maybe they're testing us or something. As if on cue, the wall opposite them shimmered and slid open. Two Varnick entered, carrying strange devices that looked like oversized tablets. One of the aliens stepped closer, pointing one of the devices at Daniel and Megan. A beam of light scanned over them, moving slowly from head to toe. The sensation wasn't painful, but it was unsettling, like being prodded by an invisible finger. What are they doing? Daniel whispered, trying to keep his voice steady. Scanning us, I guess, Megan replied, watching the aliens closely. Maybe they're trying to figure out what we are. The Varnick exchanged a series of clicks and whistles. Their glowing green eyes flickering as they studied the readings on their devices. After a few moments, they turned and left, sealing the wall behind them. The room fell silent again, save for the constant hum of the ship. "That was weird," Daniel muttered, shaking his head. "Do you think they understood anything about us?" "I don't know," Megan admitted. "But whatever they learned, it didn't seem to impress them. Did you hear that leader guy? He called us animals." Daniel frowned. "Yeah, I heard him. Like we're just another bug under a microscope." Megan stood up, pacing the small space. "Well, if they think we're harmless, we need to change their minds. We've got to find a way out of here and show them we're not just some dumb creatures." "But how?" Daniel asked, standing now too. "They've got all the fancy gadgets and weapons. We're outnumbered and outmatched." Megan stopped pacing and looked at him. "We use our brains. That's what makes us different from every other animal on this planet. Humans adapt, improvise, and survive. We've been doing it for thousands of years." Daniel sighed but nodded reluctantly. "Okay, so what's the plan?" Before Megan could answer, the wall opened again. This time, a single Varnick entered, holding a tray-like object. On it were 2 containers filled with a gelatinous substance and what appeared to be water pouches. The alien placed the tray on the floor and backed away, clicking softly before leaving. "They're feeding us," Megan said, kneeling beside the tray. She picked up one of the containers and examined it cautiously. "Guess they don't want us to starve." Daniel grabbed the other container and sniffed it. "Smells okay, I guess. Better than nothing." Megan didn't eat right away. Instead, she inspected the tray carefully, running her fingers along its edges. Suddenly, she noticed something, a small indentation near the corner. It looked almost like a button. Her eyes lit up with excitement. "Daniel, look at this," she whispered urgently. "I think it might be some kind of control panel." Daniel crouched beside her, examining the indentation. "You really think it could open the door?" "It's worth a try," Megan said, pressing the spot. Firmly, at first nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, the wall slid open slightly. Both of them froze, hearts pounding. "Do you think anyone saw that?" Daniel asked, glancing nervously down the corridor outside. "Not yet," Megan replied, peering through the gap. "Come on, let's move before they notice." They slipped out of the containment chamber and into the hallway. The ship's interior was sleek and futuristic, with smooth walls and glowing veins of light running along the floors and ceilings. The air smelled metallic, and the hum of machinery was louder here. They moved quickly but quietly, sticking close to the walls. After a few minutes, they came across a large room filled with equipment. In the center was a console covered in buttons, levers, and screens, displaying unfamiliar symbols. Several Varnick were busy working, their attention focused on their tasks. "We need to grab something useful," Megan whispered, eyeing the tools scattered around the room. "Something we can use against them." Daniel spotted a handheld device lying on a nearby table. It was compact and lightweight, with a screen that displayed a map-like image. He picked it up cautiously. "What do you think this does?" Megan shrugged. "No idea, but it looks important. Let's take it." Just as they were about to leave, one of the Vidden turned toward them, its mandibles twitching. Before it could react, Megan grabbed a nearby tool, a long, rod-like object, and swung it like a bat, hitting the alien squarely in its midsection. The Varnick stumbled back, letting out a series of alarmed clicks. "Run!" Megan shouted, and they bolted out of the room. They sprinted down the corridor, dodging around corners and ducking into alcoves whenever they heard approaching footsteps. Behind them, the sound of frantic clicking grew louder as more Varnick joined the pursuit. Megan and Daniel pushed themselves harder, their lungs burning and legs aching. Finally, they reached what appeared to be an exit hatch. Megan pressed a glowing panel next to it, and the hatch slid open with a soft whoosh. Fresh air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine trees and damp earth. Without hesitation, they jumped out, landing on the soft forest floor. For a moment, they simply stood there, breathing deeply and taking in their surroundings. The forest was dark and quiet, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. It felt surreal to be free after everything that had happened. We did it, Daniel said, grinning despite his exhaustion. We actually escaped. Don't celebrate yet, Megan warned, glancing back at the ship. They'll come looking for us. We need to get far away from here. They started moving, weaving through the trees and keeping to the shadows. After about half an hour, they reached a narrow dirt path that led toward town. Along the way, Megan examined the device Daniel had taken, fiddling with its controls. Think you can figure out how it works? Daniel asked, glancing over her shoulder. Maybe, Megan replied, squinting at the screen. It looks like it tracks movement or something. See these dots? They might represent the Varnic or maybe animals they're studying. That could be useful, Daniel said thoughtfully. If we can figure out where they are, we can avoid them, or set traps, Megan nodded. Exactly, but first we need help. 2 people can't take on an entire alien invasion alone. When they finally reached town, dawn was breaking, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. The streets were quiet, most residents still asleep. Daniel and Megan headed straight for Lucas's house. Lucas was a mechanic, known for his knack for fixing things and solving problems. If anyone could make sense of the alien gadget, it was him. Lucas lived in a modest home on the edge of town. When Megan knocked on the door, he answered grudgingly, wearing a stained t-shirt and pajama pants. His curly black hair stuck out in all directions, and his glasses were slightly crooked. Hey, Lucas, Daniel said quickly. We need your help. Lucas blinked, rubbing his eyes. What time is it? And why do you look like you've been running from a bear? No time to explain, Megan said, pushing past him into the house. Can we come in? Once inside, they explained everything that had happened, the alien ship, their capture, and their daring escape. Lucas listened intently, his expression shifting from disbelief to concern. You're telling me aliens landed in the woods and took you aboard their spaceship? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, Megan replied, holding up the device. And we stole this. Can you figure out how it works? Lucas took the gadget, turning it over in his hands. This is wild, but yeah, I'll give it a shot. I've worked with weird stuff before. While Lucas tinkered with the device, Megan paced the room anxiously. We can't just sit around waiting. If we're going to stop them, we need a plan. A plan for what? Lucas asked, looking up briefly. Taking on advanced aliens with superior technology? No offense, but we're screwed? Not if we play to our strengths, Megan said firmly. Humans are smart, adaptable, and resourceful. We've been surviving against bigger predators for centuries. These aliens may have tech, but they don't understand us or this planet like we do. Lucas paused, considering her words. All right, I'll bite. What's your big idea? We fight dirty, Megan said, a determined glint in her eye. We use the environment, traps, distractions, anything we can think of. Make them regret ever setting foot on Earth, Daniel nodded slowly. She's right. We won't win by playing fair. We hit them where it hurts and make them think twice about messing with us. Lucas chuckled, shaking his head. You guys are crazy. But fine, count me in. Let's see what this thing can do. Over the next hour, Lucas managed to decipher part of the device's functionality. It tracked animal behavior patterns, highlighting areas of high activity. More importantly, it also marked locations where the Varnic had set up observation posts and traps. This could be huge, Lucas said, pointing to a cluster of red dots on the screen. Looks like they've got a base camp somewhere near the old quarry. If we can sabotage that, we might slow them down, Megan smiled grimly. Good, that's exactly what we'll do. Ethan's cabin was nestled deep in the woods, far from the noise and distractions of town. It was a modest structure, built from weathered wood and surrounded by towering pine trees. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, signaling that its occupant was home. The trio Daniel, Megan, and Lucas approached cautiously. Unsure of how Ethan would react to their unexpected visit, Megan knocked on the door, her knuckles rapping sharply against the wood. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing a tall, wiry man with a grizzled beard and piercing gray eyes. Ethan looked them over with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. What do you want? He asked, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. I don't get many visitors. We need your help, Megan said quickly, stepping forward. It's important. Ethan crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe. Help with what? You're wasting your time if you're here about hunting tips or survival gear. It's not about that, Daniel interjected. It's bigger than that. Aliens have landed in the forest, and they've been capturing animals and people. We barely escaped. Ethan raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. Aliens? You're pulling my leg. No, we're serious, Lucas said, holding up the alien device they had stolen. This is proof. They're studying Earth's creatures, thinking we're harmless. But they're wrong. Ethan studied the gadget for a moment, then sighed. Come inside. Let's hear the whole story. Once inside, the group explained everything: the Varnik's arrival, their capture, and their narrow escape. Ethan listened silently, his expression unreadable. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair, stroking his beard thoughtfully. So you're telling me there are aliens out there, and they think we're just another dumb animal? He asked finally. Exactly, Megan replied. And we need your help to show them otherwise. Ethan chuckled dryly. You picked the right guy for the job. I've spent my whole life learning how to survive in these woods. If anyone knows how to turn the tables on predators, it's me. Relief washed over the group. We were hoping you'd say that, Daniel said, smiling faintly. Ethan nodded. All right, here's what we'll do. First, we scout their base camp, figure out their routines, their weaknesses. Then we hit them where it hurts. Make them regret ever setting foot on this planet. Over the next few hours, Ethan laid out a plan. Using the alien device, they identified key locations where the Varnik were most active. From there, Ethan suggested setting traps designed to mimic aggressive animal behavior, things like motion-activated noisemakers, decoys, and even fake trails leading away from human settlements. They'll expect us to act like prey, Ethan explained. Instead, we act like hunters, use their arrogance against them. The group worked tirelessly, gathering materials and setting up the traps under Ethan's guidance. They used whatever they could find: rope, scrap metal, old radios, to create devices that would confuse and disorient the Varnik. By nightfall, they had rigged several areas near the aliens' base camp. As they prepared for the next phase of their plan, Megan voiced a concern. What if they retaliate? What if they go after innocent people? We'll spread the word, Lucas suggested. Tell the townsfolk there's a dangerous wildlife outbreak in the area. Keep them away until this is over. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the best they could do. The group split up, warning locals to stay indoors and avoid the forest. Most people dismissed the warnings as paranoia, but a few heeded the advice, retreating to their homes for safety. That night, the team gathered at the edge of the woods, watching the alien ship from a safe distance. The vessel loomed ominously. In the clearing, its glowing vanes pulsing softly in the dark. Around it, the Varnik moved in organized patterns, carrying equipment and tending to their experiments. They're predictable, Ethan muttered, observing through binoculars. Stick to routines, don't deviate. Classic hunter behavior. And that's their weakness, Megan added. They don't expect resistance. Just then, one of the traps sprang into action. A loud screeching noise erupted from the trees, followed by the sound of snapping branches. The Varnik froze, their glowing eyes scanning the darkness. One of them pointed toward the source of the disturbance, and a small group moved to investigate. Phase 1 complete, Ethan whispered, a satisfied grin spreading across his face. The Varnik found themselves face to face with a series of decoys mannequins. Dressed in animal skins, rigged to move erratically when triggered. Confused, they fired their weapons, only to realize too late that they were attacking illusions. Meanwhile, another trap nearby released a cloud of smoke, obscuring their vision and forcing them to retreat. Back at their observation point, the humans watched as chaos unfolded among the Varnik. Their disciplined movements turned frantic, their clicks and whistles growing louder and more agitated. They're losing control, Daniel said, his voice tinged with awe. It's working. But Zorvath, the leader of the Varnik, was not so easily fooled. He stood apart from the commotion, his mandibles twitching as he analyzed the situation. Something about these disturbances felt deliberate, not random, as they initially appeared. He signaled for his subordinates to regroup, then activated a holographic map of the surrounding area. "There is intelligence behind this," Zorvith said, his translator device converting his words into English. "These are not natural occurrences. Someone or something is orchestrating them." His second-in-command clicked nervously. "What do you propose we do?" "We escalate," Zorvith replied coldly. "Deploy the sonic disruptors. Clear the area entirely if necessary." Unbeknownst to the Varnick, Megan had been monitoring their communications using the stolen device. She frowned as she translated Zorvath's orders. "They're planning to use some kind of weapon, a sonic disruptor. Whatever it is, it can't be good. We need to stop them before they cause real damage," Ethan said firmly. "If we let them deploy those weapons, it'll be bad news for everyone." The group devised a new strategy. While the Varnick focused on deploying their disruptors, Ethan and Daniel would sneak closer to sabotage the equipment. Megan and Lucas would remain behind, ready to trigger additional traps if needed. Under the cover of darkness, Ethan and Daniel crept toward the alien base camp. The Varnick were distracted, their attention divided between setting up the disruptors and dealing with the ongoing disturbances. Moving silently, Ethan disabled one of the disruptors by cutting wires and smashing critical components with a rock. Daniel followed suit, targeting another device. Suddenly, a sharp click echoed through the air. Both men froze, realizing they had been spotted. A group of Varnick approached, their weapons raised and glowing ominously. Ethan grabbed Daniel's arm, pulling him into the shadows just as Megan triggered a decoy explosion nearby. The diversion worked, at least for a moment. The Varnick turned their attention toward the blast, giving Ethan and Daniel enough time to slip away. They rejoined Megan and Lucas at the observation point, breathing heavily but triumphant. "We did it," Ethan said, wiping sweat from his brow. "At least for now," but their victory was short-lived. Zorvith, furious at the repeated disruptions, ordered a full-scale sweep of the area. Dozens of Varnick fanned out, searching for the source of the attacks. Their patience was wearing thin, and their methods grew increasingly aggressive. "They're onto us," Megan said grimly, watching the Varnick advance. "We need to fall back." The group retreated deeper into the woods, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the aliens. As they ran, Megan noticed something strange on the alien device's screen, a pattern of vibrations emanating from the Varnick's weapons. "Wait," she said suddenly, stopping in her tracks. "Look at this. These frequencies, they're high-pitched, like sound waves." Lucas squinted at the screen. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying their weapons might have a weakness," Megan replied, excitement creeping into her voice. "If we can amplify those frequencies, we might be able to turn their own tech against them." Ethan nodded slowly. "It's risky, but it could work. Let's head back to my place. I've got tools we can use to modify some of our equipment." Back at Ethan's cabin, the group worked feverishly, modifying old radio transmitters and speakers to emit the same high-frequency vibrations detected by Megan, though none of them were experts. Their combined efforts yielded a makeshift device capable of producing intense sound waves. "This should do the trick," Lucas said, testing the device. A shrill whine filled the room, causing everyone to wince. "Careful!" Megan exclaimed, covering her ears. "We don't want to blow out our eardrums before we even get close to them." By dawn, the group was ready. Armed with their modified equipment and bolstered by determination, they returned to the edge of the forest, preparing for the final confrontation. "They're arrogant," Ethan said, checking his gear one last time. "They think they're superior because they've got all the fancy toys, but they forgot one thing." "What's that?" Daniel asked. "We're humans," Ethan replied, a fierce glint in his eye. "And we don't give up without a fight." With that, the group moved forward, ready to face the Varnick head-on. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew something the aliens didn't. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or brute force, is its ability to adapt, improvise, and persevere. And that was a lesson the Varnick were about to learn the hard way. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The air was thick with tension as Daniel, Megan, Ethan, and Lucas moved quietly through the trees. Their makeshift devices slung over their shoulders. Each step they took was deliberate, careful not to snap twigs or rustle leaves. They knew the Varnick were nearby, their glowing figures visible through gaps in the foliage. Ethan led the group, his years of experience in the woods guiding them toward the alien base camp. He signaled for everyone to stop, raising a hand to silence any noise. Ahead, the Varnick were busy setting up more equipment, large, metallic pods that hummed with energy. These were the sonic disruptors Zorvith had ordered deployed, and they looked far more advanced than anything the humans had encountered before. "We need to disable those things," Ethan whispered urgently. "If they turn them on, it could scatter wildlife and cause chaos all over the forest." Megan nodded, her grip tightening on the modified transmitter. "And we can't let them hurt anyone. If these disruptors are as powerful as they seem, they might affect people too." "All right, here's the plan," Ethan said, keeping his voice low. "Lucas and I will focus on the disruptors. We'll sabotage them while you two keep the Varnick distracted." Daniel frowned. "Distract them how? We don't exactly have weapons." "You've got the sound device," Ethan reminded him. "Use it to disorient them. Make some noise and draw their attention away from us." Megan glanced at Daniel, concern flickering in her eyes. "Be careful. If they catch you, we'll be fine," Daniel assured her, though his voice betrayed a hint of nervousness. "Just stick to the plan." With a final nod, the group split up. Ethan and Lucas circled around to approach the disruptors from behind, staying hidden among the trees. Meanwhile, Megan and Daniel crept closer to the main group of Varnick, positioning themselves within range of their makeshift weapon. Taking a deep breath, Megan activated the device. A high-pitched whine filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The effect was immediate. The Varnick froze, their mandibles twitching as they clutched their heads. Some stumbled backward, clearly disoriented by the sound waves. "What is this?" one of the aliens clicked frantically, its translator struggling to process the words. "Where is it coming from?" Zorvith stepped forward, his exoskeleton gleaming in the dim light. His glowing eyes scanned the area, trying to locate the source of the disturbance. When he spotted Megan and Daniel crouched behind a fallen log, his mandibles snapped shut with a sharp click. "There!" he shouted, pointing toward them. "Capture them!" The Varnick charged forward, their movements fast but uncoordinated due to the lingering effects of the sound waves. Megan and Daniel scrambled to retreat, zigzagging through the trees to avoid being caught. Behind them, the aliens fired beams of energy that sizzled past their heads, leaving scorch marks on tree trunks. "They're gaining on us," Megan panted, glancing over her shoulder. "Keep moving," Daniel urged, gripping the device tightly. "We just need to buy Ethan and Lucas enough time." Back at the disruptors, Ethan and Lucas worked quickly. Using pliers and screwdrivers, they dismantled key components of the machines, rendering them useless. The hum of energy faded, replaced by an ominous silence. "That should do it," Lucas muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Let's get out of here before they notice." But it was too late. One of the Varnick spotted them and let out a series of alarmed clicks. Within moments, a group of aliens surrounded Ethan and Lucas, their weapons trained on the two men. "Drop your tools," one of the Varnick demanded, its translator converting the command into English. Ethan raised his hand slowly, his expression calm despite the situation. "Looks like we're in trouble," he said dryly. Lucas followed suit, dropping his screwdriver onto the ground. "Yeah, well, at least we disabled their toys." Before the Varnick could react further, Megan and Daniel reappeared, still wielding their sound device. With a flick of a switch, they unleashed another burst of high-frequency vibrations. The aliens recoiled, their bodies jerking spasmodically as the sound overwhelmed their senses. "Run!" Megan shouted, waving for Ethan and Lucas to follow. The 4 humans bolted into the woods, the Varnick stumbling after them in confusion. Though the aliens recovered quickly, the brief window of distraction gave the group enough time to regroup and put distance between themselves and their pursuers. As they caught their breath in a secluded clearing, Ethan grinned despite the danger. "That was close, but I think we made our point." "For now," Megan said, her tone serious, but they're not going to give up. Zorvath knows we're organized, and he's probably planning something worse. Daniel nodded grimly. He's right. Those disruptors were just the beginning. If we don't take them down soon, they'll escalate. Lucas adjusted his glasses, thinking hard. Then we hit them where it hurts, their ship. Without it, they can't call for reinforcements or leave the planet. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You're talking about destroying their ship? It's risky, Megan admitted. But if we can cripple their operations, it might force them to retreat. The group fell silent, weighing the risks. Attacking the alien ship would be dangerous. They'd have to get close enough to plant explosives without being detected. But it was also their best chance to end the threat once and for all. All right, Ethan said finally. We'll do but we'll need a diversion to draw them away from the ship. I've got an idea, Megan said, pulling out the alien device. This thing tracks their movements. If we create enough chaos in one area, we can lure most of them away and sneak into the ship unnoticed. The plan came together quickly. Using the remaining materials from Ethan's cabin, they fashioned crude explosives, attaching timers and triggers to ensure maximum impact. Then, they set up a series of traps and decoys near the edge of the forest, designed to mimic aggressive animal behavior on a massive scale. When night fell, the team split up again. Megan and Daniel stayed behind to trigger the traps, while Ethan and Lucas made their way toward the alien ship. The darkness provided cover, but the tension was palpable as they moved through the woods. At the designated time, Megan activated. The first trap, a series of noisemakers rigged to explode with flashes of light and deafening sounds. The effect was instantaneous. Dozens of Varnik rushed toward the disturbance, their weapons drawn and ready. Meanwhile, Ethan and Lucas approached the ship cautiously. Its sleek, insect-like design loomed ominously against the starry sky, its surface shimmering faintly in the moonlight. A small hatch on the side was open, likely used for transporting supplies. This is it, Ethan whispered, gripping the explosives tightly. Stay alert. They slipped inside, finding themselves in a narrow corridor lit by pulsating veins of light. The interior was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of machinery. Moving quickly, they planted the explosives in strategic locations near the engines, the control panel, and the storage bay. As they worked, a soft clicking sound echoed through the corridor. Ethan froze, motioning for Lucas to stay still. Around the corner, two Varnik appeared, their glowing eyes scanning the area. Before they could react, Ethan threw a smoke bomb he had brought along. Thick gray clouds filled the hallway, obscuring their vision. Now, Ethan hissed, grabbing Lucas's arm and sprinting toward the exit. Behind them, the Varnik fired blindly into the smoke, their beams of energy missing their targets. By the time the air cleared, Ethan and Lucas were already outside, racing back toward the rendezvous point. Back at the clearing, Megan and Daniel waited anxiously, watching the timer on their watches tick down. Finally, a distant rumble shook the ground, followed by a brilliant flash of light as the explosives detonated. The alien ship shuddered violently, its glowing veins flickering before going dark entirely. It worked, Daniel breathed, relief washing over him. Megan smiled faintly, though her expression remained tense, for now. But we're not done yet. True to her words, the Varnik regrouped quickly, realizing their ship had been sabotaged. Zorvath emerged from the wreckage, his mandibles snapping furiously. His glowing eyes locked onto the humans who stood defiantly in the clearing. You dare challenge us? Zorvath clicked, his voice cold and menacing. You are nothing but animals, primitive, weak. Megan stepped forward, meeting his gaze without flinching. You thought we were harmless because we didn't fight back. But you underestimated us. Humans aren't just survivors, we're innovators. And we won't let you destroy our home. For a moment, Zorvath said nothing, his mandibles twitching as he processed her words. Then, with a sharp gesture, he signaled for his subordinates to stand down. Retreat, he commanded, his voice heavy with frustration. We will report this failure and return with greater forces. The Varnik began withdrawing, disappearing into the woods as quickly as they had arrived. The humans watched them go, their hearts pounding with a mix of triumph and unease. "They're gone," Lucas said finally, breaking the silence, "for now." "But they'll be back," Megan added grimly. "And next time, they won't underestimate us." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "Then we'd better be ready." As dawn broke over the horizon, the group stood together, exhausted but determined. They had faced an unimaginable threat and emerged victorious, but they knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing up to even the most advanced adversaries. And if the Varnick returned, they would F. The days that followed the Varnick's retreat were quiet, almost too quiet. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something or someone to return. Daniel, Megan, Ethan, and Lucas spent much of their time monitoring the area, using the alien device to track any unusual activity. Though the Varnick had left, none of them believed it was truly over. Megan sat on the porch of Ethan's cabin, staring at the horizon as the sun dipped below the trees. The alien device rested in her lap, its screen glowing faintly. She scrolled through the data, searching for anything out of the ordinary. So far there was nothing, no signs of movement, no strange signals, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. "They'll be back," she said softly, breaking the silence. "Zorvith didn't strike me as the type to give up easily." Ethan leaned against the railing, his arms crossed. "You're probably right. But next time, they'll come prepared. We won't have the element of surprise on our side." "That's why we need to stay ready," Daniel added, stepping out of the cabin with a cup of coffee in hand. "We've got the advantage here. We know the terrain, and we've proven we can fight back. If they return, we'll be ready." Lucas joined them, holding a toolbox filled with spare parts and wires. "I've been thinking about ways to improve our gear. If we can replicate some of the tech they used, maybe we can level the playing field a little more," Megan nodded thoughtfully. "Good idea. But even with better equipment, we can't do this alone. If the Varnick come back with reinforcements, we'll need help." "Help from who?" Ethan asked, raising an eyebrow. "The townsfolk? Most of them still think you're crazy for warning them about aliens." "We don't have to tell them everything," Megan replied. "Just enough to get them on board. If people understand there's a real threat, they'll rally together. Humans are stronger when we work as a team." Ethan sighed but didn't argue. He knew she was right. As much as he preferred solitude, this wasn't something they could handle by themselves. Over the next few weeks, the group worked tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable. They spread word among trusted locals, framing the situation as a potential environmental disaster rather than an alien invasion. Slowly but surely, they began gathering volunteers, people willing to lend a hand, whether it was setting traps, patrolling the woods, or simply keeping watch. Meanwhile, Lucas tinkered with the alien device, reverse engineering its components to create new tools. With Ethan's guidance, he built several handheld devices capable of emitting high-frequency vibrations, similar to the one Megan and Daniel had used during their confrontation with the Varnick. These devices were distributed among the volunteers, ensuring everyone had a way to defend themselves. One evening, as the group gathered around a campfire deep in the woods, Megan noticed something unusual on the alien device's screen. A series of signals, faint but consistent, were emanating from somewhere high above the atmosphere. "What is that?" Daniel asked, leaning closer to look at the screen. "I'm not sure," Megan admitted, her brow furrowing. Looks like communication? Maybe the Varnick are sending messages to their home planet," Ethan frowned. "If they're reporting back, then reinforcements could already be on the way." Megan nodded grimly. "We need to intercept those transmissions. If we can, if they're calling for backup, we should at least try to delay it." Lucas adjusted his glasses, studying the device closely. "It's possible. If I can modify the transmitter, we might be able to jam their signal." The group agreed to focus on disrupting the Varnick's communications while continuing their preparations. Days turned into weeks, and life in the small town returned to a semblance of normalcy. The volunteers remained vigilant, patrolling the forest and maintaining the traps. Despite the calm, the tension lingered. It was only a matter of time before The aliens returned, then, one night, the sky lit up with streaks of light. Dozens of sleek, metallic ships descended silently, their forms unmistakably Varnic. The aliens had returned, and this time they came in force. Megan, Daniel, Ethan, and Lucas watched from a hidden vantage point as the ships landed in the clearing where the first ship had touched down. Hundreds of Varnic emerged, their movements synchronized and purposeful. Among them was Zorvith, his exoskeleton adorned with even more intricate patterns than before, a sign of his elevated status. "They mean business," Ethan muttered, gripping his makeshift weapon tightly. Megan nodded, her expression resolute. "This is it. We've trained for this. Stick to the plan." The group split up, each heading toward their designated positions. Using the network of traps and decoys they had set up, they launched a coordinated attack. Explosions erupted throughout the forest, startling the Varnic and forcing them to scatter. The humans used the chaos to their advantage, striking quickly and retreating before the aliens could regroup. Despite their efforts, the Varnic adapted quickly. Their weapons were more advanced this time, capable of neutralizing many of the traps. The tide of the battle shifted, and the humans found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. "We can't keep this up forever," Daniel shouted as he ducked behind a tree to avoid a blast of energy. "We don't have to," Megan replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Remember what we talked about. If we can disable their command center, it'll throw them into disarray." Ethan nodded. "Let's do it." "Lucas, cover us." With Lucas providing distraction using the sound devices, Megan, Daniel, and Ethan made a break for the largest ship, the one Zorvith had arrived in. It loomed ominously in the clearing, its surface pulsing with veins of light. Armed with explosives and determination, they slipped inside unnoticed. Inside the ship, the air was cold and metallic, the hum of machinery louder than ever. The trio moved cautiously, following the layout displayed on the alien device. They reached the command center, a large chamber filled with glowing panels and holographic displays. At the center stood Zorvath, his mandibles clicking furiously as he issued commands to his subordinates. "Now," Megan whispered, signaling for Daniel and Ethan to plant the explosives. They worked quickly, attaching charges to key systems and setting timers. Just as they finished, Zorvath turned, his glowing eyes locking onto them. "You again," he clicked, his voice dripping with disdain. "You dare trespass aboard my vessel?" Megan stepped forward, meeting his gaze without flinching. "We told you once we're not animals, we're humans. And we will protect our home, no matter the cost." Before Zorvith could respond, the trio bolted out of the ship, racing toward safety. Moments later, a deafening explosion rocked the clearing. The command ship shuddered violently, its lights flickering before going dark entirely. Chaos erupted among the Varnic as their leader's vessel was destroyed. From their hiding spot, the humans watched as the remaining Varnic scrambled to regroup. Without clear leadership, their organized assault dissolved into confusion. "It's working," Daniel said, relief evident in his voice. "They're falling apart." "But they're not gone yet," Megan reminded him. "We need to finish this." Using the distraction caused by the explosion, the humans launched a final push, targeting the remaining ships with everything they had. The volunteers joined in, armed with sound devices and improvised weapons. Together they drove the Varnic back, forcing them to retreat into their ships. As the last of the vessels lifted off, disappearing into the night sky, the humans let out a collective cheer. They had done it. They had driven the invaders away. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to normal. The townsfolk celebrated their victory, though most remained unaware of the full scope of what had transpired. For Megan, Daniel, Ethan, and Lucas, however, the experience had changed them forever. One evening, as Megan reviewed the alien device one last time, she noticed something unusual, a message encoded in a signal picked up by Lucas's modified scanner. It appeared to be a warning from the Varnic, addressed not just to Earth but to other civilizations. "Earth harbors a species unlike any we have encountered. Approach with caution." Megan smiled faintly, showing the message to the others. Looks like we made an impression, Ethan chuckled. Good, let's hope it keeps them away for good. As they sat together under the stars, the weight of what they had accomplished settled over them. Humanity had faced an unimaginable threat and emerged victorious not through brute strength, but through ingenuity, teamwork, and resilience. They had proven that Earth was not just another planet filled with docile creatures. It was home to the ultimate predator, humankind. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the Varnick prepared their next move, unsure if they should fear or respect the beings who had proven them wrong.